really love making small things. That's really what makes my heart happy. Tiny little projects that use up the tiniest of scraps just really do make me happy. I also really love reading, and I love reading classics, particularly children's classics. So today I'm going to combine my love of reading with my love of making teeny tiny things. I also love projects that use up scraps. I actually love using scraps almost more than using bigger pieces of fabric. For me, opening the scrap box is like opening a treasure chest full of jewels. These tiny pieces of fabric have been kept and saved from so many different projects. They bring back the memories of those projects, and I see things that I'd forgotten I had, little treasures. Now for today's project, I'm going to use Hexiform. If you're not sure what Hexiform is, it's an alternative to paper used in English paper piecing. And it's a fabric, it's like a fabric stabiliser. It has a fuzzy side and a smooth side. And it's actually a handmade product. It's handmade here in the UK by Ashmead Designs. Susie from Ashmead Designs invented Hexiform, it's her product. And there are places around the world that do sell it, but the main place to get it from is from Ashmead Designs, and I'll leave a link to them in the description box below. Now you can make this project without Hexiform, you can do it with paper instead. It's just that I really love using Hexiform. The tool that you're going to need the most is really sharp scissors, and I love using these Fiskars scissors. They're the embroidery ones. They're super sharp, brilliant for cutting fabric. I use them all the time. And a Sewn glue pen. For me it's essential, these two things. I just really love glue basting, and it works really well for this project. You might need a thimble for some areas of the stitching. I don't need it for EPP, but I do for other types of sewing. And my trusty embroidery scissors for snipping the threads. Now these flowers that we are making are small, so I'm using the smaller sizes of Hexiform. So the first flower that we're going to make uses 1/2 inch hexagons. I love 1/2 inch hexagons. Of all the small sizes, I think that's my favourite. I find it's not too tiny, it's just right, and you can really make some beautiful designs with 1/2 inch hexagons. I have a little box of 1/2 inch hexagons that I've already basted, and I really love choosing prints that have tiny florals on them because you can really see the tiny floral on the hexagon. You can fussy cut it almost. It's another way of just drawing your attention to the detail in the fabrics. I'm using Liberty fabric, Liberty Tana Lawn, and as you can see on this piece, it's just so detailed, so that's why even the smaller scraps are really precious to me. Now you might be wondering, why haven't I ironed this piece? Well, it's funny with Hexiform, especially with the small pieces, you'll find that you just don't even really need to iron it. Everything sort of smooths itself out. You'll see as I show you how I glue based a hexagon. When I'm cutting it out, I'm not super precise at all. I just roughly cut around the edge, 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. This definitely doesn't need to be precise. And then I just run a bit of glue just a fraction away from the edge of the shape and then fold the seam allowance over. It's really as simple as that. For the leaves, I'm using some honeycomb shapes, and you just treat them in exactly the same way as a hexagon. Hexagons all have equal length sides, but the honeycombs don't, but it doesn't really make any difference. Now it's time to stitch them together, and I'm using size 10 milliner needles that have a big eye. They're made by Tulip. They've quickly become my new favourite needles, and I'm using some Deco Bob thread by Wonderfill, just in a white colour, and it will just blend in with all of the fabrics. When I'm stitching together a hexagon flower, I always start with my central hexagon and the one that is at 12 o'clock. I place them right sides together and then stitch them together using a whip stitch, and I'm just going through the very edge of the fold of the fabric. When I start, I make sure I start right in the corner. I have a knot in the end of my thread, so the knot hits the fabric and stops, and that's when I then go back in at the same place and create a loop with my thread and put my needle through the loop to create a locking knot, and this really helps the seams not to come undone. And then it's just stitching along each seam, just going through the fold of the fabric. Of course, when you use hexiform, if you do stitch into the hexiform a little bit, it isn't going to matter. Now, when the first two hexagons are joined, I then reach for the next hexagon as I go around. I just follow where my thread has ended, so I'm going for the hexagon that is on that side, place it right sides together, and I'm going to stitch up that seam first from corner to corner in exactly the same way as before. Once I've done that, I then carry my thread back down to the bottom and then fold the hexagon over, lining up the two edges that need stitching together, and then stitch along there so that the second hexagon petal is joined to the central one. And I just continue in this way with each hexagon, sewing up the seam, carrying the thread back down and then sewing across. And in no time at all, your hexagon flower will take shape. Today's video has very kindly been sponsored by Skillshare. Now, as you know, I absolutely love hand stitching, all types of hand stitching, and I particularly love embroidery. There's something so creative about embroidery, and there is so much to learn, so many different styles. So I was really excited to see this class on embroidery on photographs by Peggy Dean on Skillshare. I thought this idea was so creative and so unique, and I'm really looking forward to giving it a go this summer when I will hopefully have a little bit more time on my hands. The class is really well organised and broken down into steps, and she walks you through 10 basic stitches and then gives you all of the skills that you need to be able to create such unique artworks using photographs and embroidery together. Skillshare is the largest online learning platform with such a huge array of creative classes on topics such as knitting, crochet, sewing your own clothes, slow stitching, embroidery, photography, and so many more. If you're interested in finding out more, there's a link in the description box below, and the first 500 people to sign up will get 1 month of Skillshare for free. So thank you so much to Skillshare for sponsoring today's video. So I made 2 hexagon flowers in this size because I'm going to put them back to back with the wrong sides facing each other so that there is a pretty flower on each side of the bookmark. So now it's time to make a stem for the bookmark, and you can use any fabric strips that you like. I just happen to have some bias binding left over, short length, so I decided to use that, but you could just cut a strip of fabric if you wish. I'm just tacking it together by just putting a bit of the Sewn glue there, but you could pin this if you prefer. And then all I'm going to do once I've done that is whip stitch down the edge of it. You can do any decorative stitch that you like. You could do blanket stitch. I'm just doing a whip stitch. I left the raw edges at one of the ends, but at the bottom where I'm going to put the leaves, I just folded the raw edges inside and then whip stitched around the bottom as well. So now it's time to assemble it. So you can use some pins just to attach your hexagon flowers back to back with each other with the stem in between. I should have mentioned before, but you could use ribbon for the stem. You don't have to use fabric. You can use ribbon or any trim that you've got, like bric rack or something like that. Then just pin it all together, and then I'm going to just whip stitch around the edge of the hexagon flower and just do some straight stitches where the stem is so that it catches the stem inside and it's not going to fall out. And once you've stitched all the way around, just complete it with a knot and then bury your thread tail inside. So now it's time to attach the leaves, and I just did this in exactly the same way as I did the flower. I placed them wrong sides together. I put some glue in there just to keep them stuck and then pin them to the bottom of the stem. You could position them any way you like, but I wanted them hanging out the end. I thought that would look really cute. So again, do some straight stitches at the point where it joins the stem and then just whip stitch around the rest of it. This is what it looks like when it's done, and I really like the way you get the flower at the top and the leaf at the bottom, the perfect way to mark your page. But we aren't done yet. I really wanted to use the hex petal shapes to make another flower, and I'm using the 3/8 of an inch hex petals. I love this Liberty print. Look at the tiny details on it. You can really fussy cut these flowers so I was really keen just to make one more for now. So you do it in exactly the same way as you do with the hexagon. The only difference is that you have a curved edge on the petals. There is a hexagon in the centre, so that's really straightforward. So just cut out your seam allowance with just about 1/4 inch, and then just carefully fold your fabric around that curve, and you'll see how it creates little pleats, and that's what's going to give you a really nice curve. So you stitch together the hex petal shapes in exactly the same way as we just did the hexagon flower. The hex petals are the same as hexagons, only that one edge is curved. But I wanted to add some embroidery to this little flower. It's been a long time since I've added a little embroidered flower to my patchwork. It's something I really want to go back to. I used to do it all the time, and I just love the tiny detail in it. It's just something very simple, very sweet. So I'm choosing some Sewn embroidery thread. This thread is a little bit different to DMC because it is 4 strands instead of 6. So I'm going to split it into 2 strands, and I'm using a tiny embroidery needle just to be able to get the tiny details. So I'm just adding tiny lazy daisy stitches, and I'm doing them in the direction of each petal from the centre outwards. And when I do these, I just take it slow and don't pull the thread too hard, and that way you get a really nice petal stitch. And once that's done, I like to finish it off with some French knots in the centre. Now, I wanted to show you a different way to back them. If you didn't want to make 2 identical flowers, you could use felt. So I stuck my flower onto some felt, cut around it with the really sharp scissors, and it creates the perfect backing. And I just whip stitch that together, And then voila, we have a finished bookmark, perfect for my secret garden book. I really hope you enjoyed the tutorial today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you really soon with something else. Take care. Bye bye.